there's only one Michael Jordan, there's only one Peyton Manning, there's only one Derek Jeter, or whoever it may be. When I represent chefs, it's aspirational, but it feels attainable because at the end of the day, they're chefs and most people are cooking at home.
Welcome to Celebrity Focus Insiders with your host, Rick Backrack.
Hey, thanks for joining me today. We've got a great guest, otherwise known as the most handsome guy in the food business. Lonny Sweet is the CEO of Sweet Management Group. He's got 25 plus years in the business of connecting famous people with famous brands. Before Sweet Management Group, Lonny cut his teeth in the business at places like SFX Sports Group, IMG, and MSL Sports. And his unique feature is that he specializes in culinary talent. Lonny, you represent some big name chefs, people like Marc Forgione, Tiffani Faison, and Michelle Bernstein. How has the market for culinary personalities evolved in the past 20 years?
I mean, before I even get there, Rick, I just want to thank you for introducing me the way I like to be introduced as the best looking man in food business. I think it's maybe beyond food business, but I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
I read my notes well, Lonny.
And I appreciate you having me on. That was a very professional introduction. What was the question again? What's it like representing culinary personalities?
We're going to start with this. How has the market for culinary people evolved in the past 20 years or so? Because it's very different than it used to be.
Yeah, it's evolved a lot over the last 20 years. I think if you look back to guys like Chef Gordon, who really started this, started the representation of celebrity chefs with Wolfgang Puck and Larry Forgione, who's Marc Forgione, my client's dad, Emeril Lagasse, and the whole world. It's really evolved a lot since then. And I think even in the last 5 or 6 years, it's evolved a lot more too. And during the pandemic, I mean, everybody was at home and they were cooking and they were in their kitchen. So the utilization of chefs as kind of personalities as a way to kind of bring people together really started to pick up. These virtual events have been really a boom for us. People cooking at home, brands cooking at home, brands using sales teams and chefs to kind of bring people together when they were not able to do it in person. So it's been great. I think it continues to evolve. You made the introduction of me coming from sports. I always tell people that when you represent athletes, when I used to represent athletes and coaches and broadcasters, there was something that they were aspirational but unattainable. Meaning, there's only one Michael Jordan, there's only one Peyton Manning, there's only one Derek Jeter, or whoever it may be. When I represent chefs, it's aspirational, but it feels attainable because at the end of the day, they're chefs and most people are cooking at home. So it's a different kind of dynamic when you're talking about chefs because people feel like they can do what these chefs can do. And so conversations are very different. And the way they look at them are very different. And so a lot of these brands that understand that and figure out how to weave those conversations and weave those concepts in, it's really great.
25 years ago, there might have been a half a dozen famous chef personalities in the business. I think back to times, and this might even be before you, but Graham Kerr and Justin Wilson and folks like that. There might have been a half dozen in the country that were of note. Now, fast forward, there's 200-300 plus. A Food Network, Cooking Channel, places like that have had a huge part in the development of those personalities. How does a brand find the right fit with a celebrity chef?
Well, it's a great question. I mean, you're probably a better one to answer that. I think it's the same way that you would look from an athlete side or an entertainer side or a musician side. It really is about personality fit. I think authenticity, depending on what you're looking to do, right? A lot of people, if they're doing local deals, you're looking for a local chef or looking somebody that's got celebrity in that specific market. If you're looking on a national level, I think making sure that the personalities align, right, and making sure that it's authentic and it can come across that way is always critically important. Reach obviously is important too, and I mean the way that these deals are being constructed these days with social content and really creating your own medium and creating your own platform to go communicate out to the masses. And it really is about making sure that the chefs are authentically engaged with the brand in some way. And that's where guys like me and guys like you come into play, making sure that you're asking the right questions on the brand side, right? Like as an agent, a business manager, for these chefs, I always start asking those questions when we start talking to brands to make sure that that alignment is there, right? Learning as much as we possibly can about what they're trying to achieve, what they're trying to accomplish before we even throw out suggestions or before we even create lists for people. It's really like understanding what they're trying to accomplish and then trying to slot people in there that we think kind of align with what they're trying to do.
In the old days, it was advertising, PR, promotions, marketing, and then we saw this shift to experiential marketing.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's had a dramatic effect on the marketing you're doing for your clients. What types of things are you seeing, and what types of things do your clients love doing that would fall into that experiential space?
Rick, that's the fun part. I mean, I have to be honest with you, right? Like representing athletes is great and it was fun and it was great for my ego when I was younger. From a creative perspective, working with chefs, like you have such a wider canvas, right? Like we did an amazing event last night at Restaurant Marc Forgione, who's one of my clients. We've been doing this private event with this company for the last 8 years. And last night, Mark actually recreated his dad's menu from 1987. So his dad is a famous chef. His name is Larry Forgione. He's the godfather of American cuisine. And he had this really amazing restaurant in New York City called An American Place, which was an institution. Larry was the guy that really kind of brought farm to table cuisine to the United States. Last night, they recreated the menu and kind of changed up the way Restaurant Marc Forgione looked to look like An American Place from 25 years ago, 30 years ago, 1987, longer than that, 40 years ago. So, being able to playfully kind of create experiences, right, in person, and then just utilizing food as a tool, right? Like at the end of the day, the difference between a chef and an athlete is a chef really is a creative person, right? Like by nature, they're an artist, they're a musician. So like when you give them the ability to kind of create experiences and have some fun with it and create engagement, like it really is endless, right? Like, and so like there's just a lot of fun stuff to do from an experiential side on the food side comparatively to sports specifically.
And I know you represent quite a few people. Who are some of the other personalities, chef personalities that are part of your group?
So we've got a roster of about 15 or 16. I think the top ones are, you mentioned it, Marc Forgione, who's a chef here in New York City, Nina Compton, who's a James Beard Award winner in New Orleans, Michelle Bernstein, who's been with me for more than a decade in Miami, Ludo Lefebvre, who's a Michelin-starred chef in LA, really recreated the LA dining scene 20 years ago. Tiffani Faison in Boston, who is one of the top judges. She just won Tournament of Champions on Food Network last year. Rodney Scott, who's a Beard Award-winning barbecue guy in Charleston. He's got restaurants across Alabama, Atlanta. He's going to be expanding a whole bunch around the country. And then we just got a roster of really diverse people. We represent Claudette Cepeda, who's a chef out in San Diego. We're really trying to kind of hit all different categories. Another amazing guy named Akhtar Nawab, who's as much of a businessman as he is an amazing chef. So we've just got a kind of a unique roster of chefs across the country.
And I do love the diversity. Eduardo Garcia, I know, is another client of yours, an amazing personality with a great story. We've got a ton more to talk about. We're going to take a quick break. So viewers, stick around with us. We'll be back right after these messages. just a quick reminder to our viewers, if you like what you're seeing, go ahead and subscribe. I don't know where that button is. It's somewhere around. I'll remind you again later. But subscribe to the podcast. We've got a great shows coming up with a lot of folks in the industry of connecting famous people with famous brands. So we'll return to the conversation here with Lonny Sweet. Lonny, what are some of the exciting innovations that you're seeing in the food business these days? What are the trends? Where are things going, over the next few years?
God, that's a loaded question, Rick. I think experiential dining is here. It's getting more important. I think people want to be entertained in some way, shape, or form when they eat. Great meals are always going to be a part of what people want to do. But if you can add a level of entertainment, if you can make people smile and kind of get away from their day to day lives, whatever problems they may have, and just kind of immerse them in kind of what they're doing for 2, 3 hours, I think that's really important. I've got a client down in Miami. I mentioned Michelle Bernstein, who really does an exceptional job with this. She's got a couple of restaurants that I tell people all the time, like when I walk in, when I leave exponentially happier than when I walk in. Right? They've got live music. The staff is always smiling. It's experiential by nature. And so I think you're going to start seeing that more from a dining perspective. I hope you're going to see it a little bit more. And then just the idea of way people are using food. I think in our industry, and you're seeing it probably more than I am, content creators and what content creators are doing online and how they're bringing that offline, and then vice versa. How are award-winning chefs that are offline bringing their expertise and their knowledge online? I think you're going to continue to see those swaps. I mean, and I'm sure you pay attention to it. That guy, Mr. Beast, who is a really big online personality. He opened up a burger place, at an American, or wherever the mall is in New Jersey. He had 10,000 people come out for the opening. Right, he's a smart dude that was able to leverage his online audience to drive them to something offline. So there's a lot of fun stuff in food. And I think it goes back to your question before, about the things that we're seeing in trends. I think really leaning into the creative nature of food. It's one of those kind of, I mean, for me, I love it because it's one of those things that generates memories, right? It's a lot like sports, in that you've got certain things and certain moments in your life. I'm sure there's a handful of times in your life that you remember the best meal you ever had, or a certain smell actually brings you back to your childhood, or something about food or a meal or conversation. Like a lot happens around the dining room table, and so there's some fun, exciting stuff around that.
Um, let's go back and let's take a look at those talent brand connections.
Yeah.
So those brands that are connecting with chefs, by and large, what do you think they're looking for when they're making their purchase decisions? They're deciding who to work with. What do
Yeah.
you think the brands are looking for?
So obviously depends on on the type of engagement, right? If they're looking for, we're doing a bunch of, VIP dinners right now across the country with a specific brand. And in each one of those markets, they're looking for personality, right? Again, how can a chef bring something to the table that gets people excited, gets people, makes them happy, right? Obviously delicious food. Access is also really important, right? Creating that VIP factor, making sure that you're delivering something that maybe they can't get on their own. I think that's always been part of this, sports, entertainment, culinary, like being able to create something that you can't buy. And then they're all different, Rick, right? Like, depending on the brand and are they doing a PR campaign, or are they creating, an ad campaign? Is it digital? Is it content? They all kind of are looking for something different just based on their goals and objectives, right? And I think there's so many options now, right? Like back when I started, and you've been in this industry for longer than I have, there wasn't that many options, right? And so you start throwing in these content creators that have really large, followings, and have created their own platforms. There's just a lot of kind of noise out there. And so I've got a client roster of experts. I mean, they're not content creators, they're not influencers, they're chefs that have influence. And so we always talk about like being an actual expert. And so, to answer your question, I think it's all different, right? It really is about, having a conversation. Each brand is slightly different. Not slightly different. Each brand is very different. We just try to be, a problem solver and give them a solution that makes sense for whatever they're looking for.
So when the talent or the chefs, when
Yeah.
they're considering companies to work with and brands to represent, and I know there's a general question, but what do the chefs want? What does the talent want? What are they looking for in a relationship?
They want to do cool shit. They want to do cool shit and work with people they like. Right? I mean, listen, there's always transactions. I mean, we'll be honest, right? There's a part about generating revenue and leveraging what you're doing. But at the end of the day, especially on the culinary side, they're creative people by nature. And so, doing fun things, creating cool shit and working with good people and cool brands. I mean, that's kind of what every talent wants, right? Like, I think you probably asked the same thing for, one of these bigger athletes or these musicians. Like, they want it to feel authentic and they want to have a good time doing it. They don't have a lot of time, man, right? Like chefs are busy, athletes are busy, musicians are busy. Like, you've got to create something so that when they do have time, that it's actually worth what they're spending and they're having a good time doing it. And that's when I think the really good content or the really good kind of results come in, is when you find that kind of meeting of the minds.
So we talked a little earlier, Lonny. You've done thousands of deals. Any
It makes me
favorites?
feel old, but yes.
Well, sorry, man. It is what it is. I've done thousands as well.
Makes me feel
We
old.
we all have our favorites, right?
Yeah.
Any one deal stand out to you, and uh, what was great about it?
God, Rick, I don't know if there's one that stands out. There's moments that stand out, right? Like, as I was leaving IMG, I was working with Joe Theismann, and it was during the Detroit Super Bowl, and we had just met with, the GMC, the head of GMC or whatever it may be. And I think halfway through the conversation, Joe and this guy realized that they were both from they had roots in the same country. And all of a sudden they started speaking in a different language. And that kind of led to a really great partnership for Joe. It's kind of the last deal that I did when I left IMG. So that sticks out in my brain a lot. I mean, I don't know if there's specific deals that really stick out that I love that kind of stick out. There's just a lot of fun stuff that I get a chance to do. I think the one thing that I love about being in the culinary world and representing chefs is they're all very different, right? Like, I'm doing a private VIP event last night. We're licensing products for other clients. We're opening up restaurants and hotels. We're doing TV shows. We're doing campaigns. Like, one of the beautiful parts of my job is it's just so many different things that's what I get off on. Like, I really like trying to solve problems for brands and solve problems for my clients as well.
So, thinking about brand leadership, what's some advice that you can give them? Things that might uh, pave the way for them on deals, or things that brand leadership or agency leadership should be thinking about in terms of working with, culinary figures.
Yeah, don't be an asshole. To be honest with you, right? I think the reality is, like, relationships are as important as anything. I don't think anybody wants to try to put a square peg in a round hole. We certainly don't. So I think being honest and giving real information about what they're looking for, and not trying to be, cute and coy, right? Like, just tell us what you're looking for, right? And be honest about your budget. I think the vast majority of good agents or good managers will try to stick within where you want to be, right? And if they're good, they'll say, listen, we don't have somebody that fits within this range. But I think sometimes people try to be I think brands and agencies sometimes try to feel too guarded, and they don't want to give you enough information. And the reality is, the more information we're given, right, whether that's about what your goals are, about where you're looking to, push the media, about what your budget is, like, the better we can inform you about who we have that might make sense. And if we don't have something that makes sense, I do it all the time, we'll point you in a direction to somebody else that will. I think this whole secrecy thing sometimes it gets in the way. I think it gets in the way of the ultimate objective of creating, like, a really good alliance.
Lonny, that's great counsel, and you said it very well. I want to thank you so much for being with us today. You've been a great guest. I'd love to do this again. Hopefully,
Let's
you
do it.
enjoyed the experience. To our viewers, if you enjoyed the show, please go ahead and subscribe. I don't know where that button is. It's here, it's there, I don't know. You'll see something somewhere that says subscribe. Go ahead and click it, or go to celebrityfocus.com. You can sign up for our newsletter on the website, and chances are at some point we'll have a subscribe thing over there as well. So that's it. We will see you very, very soon with another episode of Celebrity Focus Insiders.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Celebrity Focus Insiders, connecting famous people with famous brands. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date and check out our past episodes at celebrityfocus.com.